Good Monday morning. I am MPJ, and you are watching FunFunFunction. Today we're going to continue our series on object creation in JavaScript, and we're going to explore the new keyword. We are going to talk about new when it is applied to functions. We're not going to talk about new being applied to class, because class is a new concept in ECMAScript 6, and in order to understand how that works, we need to go back and understand a little bit of history and how classes were faked in ECMAScript 5. I want to stress that this is a series. If you start watching this episode before watching any of the others, you're going to be confused because these build on top of each other. You can find the full playlist by clicking in the episode description. This series is a deep dive in object creation on JavaScript. You are not going to... If you just want to quickly learn how to create object in JavaScript and get started, you know, like this is not the series for you. This is if you're like been working with JavaScript for a year or two and you really want to understand these things from the fundamental level. Basically, we're geeking out seriously about object creation here. Be warned. Let me... Oh! Sneezing break. Let me show you what I mean by new applied to functions, so that you know exactly what I'm referring to. You might have seen this on when you're trying to learn how to do when you first Google how to do a class in JavaScript. This is generally what you find. It's going to be a function, and it's going to be like an object, say a person. And perhaps that person has a saying, and you're assigning that to this. And it's going to be saying, yeah. And then you're going to see something like this: person dot prototype talk, and it's going to be function. And it's going to say this dot saying, say the console log, and it's gonna be I say, and like this. And then we instantiate a person. We're gonna use var because these examples are in ECMAScript 5, and it's gonna be like Crockford, and it's gonna be a new person, and it's going to be semicolons. One. Crockford. And we are going to then go Crockford dot talk, and we're gonna run that node dot example.js bonk, and it's going to say I say semicolons 111111111. If you don't get the Crockford joke, it's a guy in the JavaScript community that has been active in JavaScript for a very, very long time, and he's famous for a book called JavaScript, The Good Parts, and he really doesn't like the omittance of semicolons in JavaScript. I tend to omit them, which annoys a lot of people because they've read what Crockford said. And there's actually a video on the whole semicolon issue that I made just so that I wouldn't have to reply all over and over again. You can find it in the episode description. Why should we even bother learning this? Why not simply just learn the class keyword and forget all this old stuff in ECMAScript 5 land? That's old. Just forget about that. Well, I can think of at least 4 reasons. The first one is that you are going to run across this. This is code that you will find as you progress as a JavaScript developer. JavaScript is a language that has been around for a very long time. So if you're a professional developer, you're going to run across code that is written in a style that is not the absolute most recent version of JavaScript. And if you want to move from being a okay developer to a great developer, you need to be able to deal with all kinds of code, old code included. The second important reason that you might want to learn how this works is that the class keyword uses this technique under the hood. So the class keyword is really just a thin syntactic sugar that actually does this behind the scenes. And the class keyword in ECMAScript 6 is a bit of a so-called leaky abstraction, which means that you're going to see bits and bobs of this technique sticking out, even if you just use the class keyword exclusively. And if you don't understand what is going on under the hood, it's gonna confuse you. The third reason is that in order to understand our present, we need to understand our history. If you don't understand where JavaScript is coming from, how things were added on top of each other, and where stuff came from, you will have a much harder time to understand why the language looks as it does. This is true with the world in general, of course, but it's especially valuable in programming to understand the history of things. And fourth, because in this series we're just geeking out about learning every nook and cranny about the language. This feature is in the language, it's there. It's not the most modern way of doing things, but it's not deprecated, it's not removed, it is there, and we want to understand JavaScript fully. Because we want to be experts, because that feels good. Okay, but you want to know, what exactly is it that new does? I'm not a native English. Also, this place is so messy. It looks kind of clean because it's just shooting the only area in this office that is not a complete mess. The desk is a mess. It's just piles of stuff and there's paper all over the floor and it's just, I really need to clean, but I just got back from 2 conferences and blah. But I digress. So what happens here when we call new person? What exactly is going on? Well, new is going to do a couple of things. The first order of business that new does is that it creates a new object. Just a plain object, nothing, no properties, no nothing. Second order of business is that it's going to look at whatever we have called new on, and it's going to check that that object's prototype property here, and it's going to set the prototype of the new object that it just has created to be that object. Third, it's going to again look at what we call new on, this function that I'm now going to refer to as the constructor, and it's going to call that that function, but it's going to call it with the new object that it created in step 1 assigned to this variable here. The fourth and final step that new takes is to return the new object that it created, and then set the prototype of, and then execute the constructor with as where the object was set as this, and then it returns the object, and that is what we get here as that we assign to the Crockford variable and then call talk on. So this is the way that classes are faked in ECMAScript 6. If the prototype part confuses you, it's because you have cheated and not watched the previous episodes in the series. You can find the series playlist by clicking below. If you don't understand prototypes and have not watched the previous episodes on prototypes, this episode is just gonna confuse you. But even if you know prototypes, this was a little bit confusing. So we're gonna go really slow here, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to pretend that the new keyword, that new did not exist, and we would have to build it as a function instead. So that's what we're gonna do. We're going to just call new here. So there. And then we're going to declare the function new. And we're gonna rebuild new. For me, rebuilding something on my own is often a great way of understanding how something works. So again, we're going through the 4 things that new does. The first thing is that we want to create a new object. So let's do that. We're gonna var. We're gonna call this ob, and it's a new object. Woo! We have completed one of the 4 things that new does. Number 2, we're gonna set the prototype. Now, we learned how to do this in the last episode, the prototype episode. We're going to call object.setPrototype of obj, and we're going to set it to the constructor.prototype. And the first argument that we're going to give to new is the constructor. And now when I look at it, look here, this does not make sense because we're calling person here. That won't be possible. We need to instead do this, or it's not going to make sense. So the first argument that we pass to our implementation of new is the constructor. Constructor. And the second argument is going to be whatever arguments that we want to be passed to the constructor. So we're setting the prototype here. We're setting the prototype of object to whatever object is on the prototype property of the constructor. And remember that we're passing in person here as the constructor. And the person here, like the prototype property, we're setting talk, the talk property on that object. So we're building out the property prototype here. And prototype is a special property on every function object that you're creating, because function is an object in JavaScript. It's a bit mind-blowing. But whenever a function object in JavaScript is created, it has this prototype property automatically. I'm not sure if it has it for any other reason than to support this thing. I don't think so. Please comment in the comments if you know for any other reason why. But either way, with this line, we now completed the second criteria, that second step that new does, which is to set the prototype. The third thing that new does, that we need to re-implement in our re-implementation of new, is to execute the constructor with this set to the new object that we had created. Okay, this is gonna be a little bit weird. So we're gonna take the constructor and we are going to call apply on it. Now, you might or might not be familiar with apply. You can think of it as a bind, except that it executes the function immediately and returns its value. And if you're not familiar with bind, it's because you have not watched the previous episodes in the series. Click the description. The first argument that we give apply is going to be the object that we want to have set as this. And remember that this is going to be the object that we just have created, the new object here. The second argument that apply takes is an array of the arguments that we want to call the function with. So in the case of the person constructor here, it's going to be an array with just one item, the saying. So it's going to be, this is in practice what we're going to be, that is what we're going to be passing in. Oh, by the way, I just noticed that we have one parenthesis too much down here. So how do we actually create this thing dynamically here? Because we can't have it hard-coded like this. That's not a proper implementation of new. We are passing the first argument here, like that's the constructor, and then it's going to be like the arguments that we're passing, want passed to the constructor. So here is a bunch of arguments. Let's actually execute these things. I'm going to comment these 2 lines out, and I'm going to start teaching you, if you don't already know it, about the arguments keyword. Let's run this. Node example.js and see it, boom, break horrendously. Unexpected token new. Alright, yeah, so what? Since new is a reserved keyword, we can't actually call this new. Let's call it something else. Let's call it spawn. Spawn more Crockford overlords. Let's run that again. Node example.js. Alright. Now, it logs out the console.log arguments, and it logs out this thing. This is what the arguments look like. So it's an almost array. This is a super annoying design thingy in JavaScript that arguments is not actually an array object. And it's kind of sort of an array. It has, for instance, it does have a length property, I think. If I log out length, it's going to be 2. Yeah, but it isn't an array. So because you know, we want to get rid of this first argument here from the array before passing it to apply. We just want this one and whatever comes after it if we have multiple arguments. So we will probably reach for something like slice, which would give us like, I think we can just do that. That is what we, let me clear this. And we're going to call node example.js. And we're going to find out that, arguments does not have a slice function because it's not an array. So we need to convert arguments to an array first. Gotta call it var args array. If this was ECMAScript 6, we could use Array.from and just call arguments. And let's log that out, see if that worked. Args array. Node example. Yeah, right. Now we actually get something that looks like an array. And we could then call slice on it. And yes, slice from index 1, which will give us just the semicolons. Let me adjust my terminal a little bit because it's annoying me. Alright, that's better. And now we could uncomment this and pass in the sliced semicolons arguments array to the apply function. But we want to do this in ECMAScript 5 for consistency reasons, because we're doing a bit of a history lesson here. And in ECMAScript 5, Array.from does not exist. So when you don't have Array.from, this is how you did it back in the day. You go to the array object and you locate the prototype property, and you access the slice function that's on there, and then you apply, call that with the arguments property as this. So slice is actually generic. It doesn't require this to be an array object, and I suspect that is partially because so that you can use it like this. Either way, let's remove the Array.from with our new retro way of creating an array out of arguments. And then we slice those arguments to get rid of this one, like the constructor, the first argument here. So getting rid of this so that we get just this, which we then pass to apply, which means that constructor is being called with the saying, the semicolons 111. Which brings us to the fourth thing that new does. It's going to return the created object. Return object. No, and I think that this might actually work now. Let's run it. Node example.js. I say semicolons 11111. We just implemented new. There is one more weirdness with this that we need to implement because I lied. It's actually sometimes here because there is an edge case. If the constructor returns an object, if it returns, I don't know exactly why you would ever do this, but it is the behavior. Like if I return dumb object, true, some object here, that is going to be returned as Crockford instead. So if I do, so I guess that we should do something like this. I'm gonna return this or the object. This is going to be a correct implementation. So if I do node example.js, this is going to give us an error because Crockford.talk is not a function because it has returned the dumb object true. I'm just gonna demonstrate this to you. Console.log hello. And I'm going to return, log out the Crockford object. I'm going to go node, node example.js. And if I scroll up, you see that hello, and it has returned the DOM object. And this is, again, this is actually what it's like. So if I return and not use our spawn method and instead call new as in the standard way, like the native implementation, and I'm gonna and I run it node example.js. You see that yes, that is actually what it does. It does return the whatever object that the constructor returns if it happens to return something. Super weird, but that's the way it behaves. Back and node example.js. I say semicolons 111 and we revert to our spawn. Cool, and I'm gonna do that again, example.js, and it's the same behavior. This is how new works on the inside. So we talked about the new keyword, more specifically how new is applied to functions, not to classes, because that's the ES5 way of doing it, and it's important to learn history. And we have delved into what exactly new does. First thing it does is to create a new object, then it sets the prototype. Third, it executes the constructor with this set to the object that it created in step 1. And finally, it returns the created object, unless the constructor returns an object, and then it will return that instead. Is there anything that was unclear? Please post a comment down below. And also, if you feel confident with these things, have a look at the comments below and find a person that is not clear on them and help them out, because that is the absolutely best way that you can learn and grow as a programmer, is by helping others. You have watched an episode of FunFunFunction. I release new episodes like this one every Monday morning at 0800 GMT. I am MPJ, that's the Twitter bird there. Until next Monday morning, stay curious.